In this video, we are going to be looking at who needs an EHC plan, how to get an EHC plan, needs assessment requests, the legal test for a needs assessment request, and the timescales. Who needs an EHC plan? EHC plans for children and young people whose special education need requires more help than would normally be provided in a mainstream educational setting. That could be a college, school or nursery. Or any child or young person where there are continued concerns that they are not making educational progress despite interventions and support from the school's budget, struggling to access the learning in their setting. Although the plan can include health or social care needs, a child will not get a plan if they only have health or social care needs, the needs that do not affect their education. An EHC plan can be issued to a child or young person between the ages of 0 and 25 years of age. How do I get an EHC plan? In order to obtain an EHC plan, there will need to be a request to the local authority to undertake an EHC needs assessment for the child or young person. An EHC needs assessment is a full investigation of a child or young person's educational, health and social care needs. It is the first step to getting an EHC plan, and at the end of the assessment, the local authority must decide whether it will issue an EHC plan or not. As stated in the Code of Practice, a needs assessment is it is a process to consider whether there is evidence that despite the early years provider, school or post-16 institute has taken purposeful action to identify, assess and meet the SEN of the child or young person, and the child and young person has not made the accepted progress. Local authorities are responsible for carrying out an EHC needs assessment under the Children and Families Act 2014. The following have a right to make the request. This could be a child's parent if the child is aged 0 to 16, a young person over the age of 16 but under the age of 25, or a person acting on behalf of a school or post-16 institute, and this should be in agreement and knowledge of the parent or young person when possible. The needs assessment. The needs assessment brings together information and views from the following: the parent, the child or young person, the early years setting, school or post-16 provider. Also from other professionals who are working with the young person or supporting the child or young person, and is about what the child or young person can and cannot do, and the special help they need. The EHC plan is a positive document which looks at strengths before support needs and use these identified strengths to build on the provisions that can be used to support those identified support needs. The local authority expects schools to have completed at least 2 assess plan do review cycles via the SEN support before submitting an EHC plan needs assessment request. In some cases, this may not always be possible, or if it is a parent or young person that has requested the needs assessment, this evidence may not be available at that time. If evidence is not or cannot be produced at the time of the need assessment request, then the local authority will ask the school straight away for evidence that they've put in place SEN support for that student, that they've reviewed the quality first teaching, which includes differentiated learning, strategies to support SEN pupils and ongoing assessments. They will also ask for information on how they are currently meeting the child's needs within the school resources, and ask to provide copies of SEN support plans. Also, any involvement they've had from outside professionals for that student, education psychology or specialist outreach services, and that they've reviewed any of the recommendations. Also, if they've applied to the local authority already for funding. They will also ask for evidence of the child or young person's academic attainment or the development milestones in those younger children, and the rate of progress. And they will ask for evidence that where progress has been made, it has only been as a result of much additional intervention and support over and above which is usually provided to other students. The SENCO at the education setting sends the information to the local authority and any additional supporting evidence such as medical reports and provision maps. If this is a parent or a young person's request, then they will be responsible for producing these reports. Parental views. As part of the request for the needs assessment, the parent or carer will be asked for their views. This is normally captured before the request is submitted, however can be asked for as soon afterwards as possible. Parents will be asked for a brief history of their child's development, support they have received from any education, health or social care services, independence of the child, both at home and in the community, the child's behaviour at home, and are there any health or care needs which in their view are affecting your child or their child's education. Parent and carers will also be asked during this time on who else they would like to contact for further information during the assessment, although that won't be done until it's been agreed by the local authority to undertake the needs assessment. The legal test. Once the local authority has received the need assessment request and all the information and reports, they must apply the legal test when considering a request. This test is contained in section 36 of the Children and Families Act 2014. The legal test has two parts, and the request must fulfil both parts for the agreement of the needs assessment to take place. Part 1 is, does the child or young person may or have a special education needs? Part 2, that it may be necessary for the special education need to have a special education provision to be made, and this can only be made through the issuing of an EHC plan. Information provided with the needs assessment request will determine if the two parts have been met and if there is a need for the assessment to be completed. Carrying out the needs assessment. Once the local authority has agreed to carry out the needs assessment, they must seek advice and information from several people, including the parents, the school, an education psychologist, health and social care services, and any other professionals that have been involved with the child or young person. This can be done in addition to the information already submitted. The local authority requires parent and carers' consent to collect information about their child or young person from the other professionals. It is important that any consent forms is completed and returned as soon as possible to the local authority. The timescales. There is a legal timeframe that needs to be followed for an EHC plan process. The whole process from requesting an EHC plan needs assessment to a final EHC plan being issued is 20 weeks.